Hey, we're here at Chicago's Oak Street Beach. It's one of my most favorite spots in the city. During the spring and summer, this place is packed because you have the beach, which is right on Lake Michigan, which people treat like it's the ocean. And then right behind you, you have this beautiful skyline. It's one of our kids' favorite places to come and to hang out during the summer. They love being able to build sandcastles on the beach with the skyscrapers right behind them. Right now, my son Elijah is really into like the old school G.I. Joes, like from the 80s. So every day he wants to have a huge battle all over the family room, and I love it. I love getting down there and having those battles with him. His little sister Gigi, though, right now is really into princesses and My Little Pony. So there's that. I'm not really doing battles with My Little Ponies, I'm gonna be honest with you. See, we love being able to be with our kids and to be able to introduce them to who God is, our great and big God. And we're so grateful that they genuinely love God and are learning more and more about Him. But the reality that my wife Jean and I know is that even though we're doing the best that we can to teach them about God and introduce them to Him, they're going to assume certain things about God, not from what we say, but from what we do. See, their little images of God are going to be directly connected to us, their parents. It's something that we all do without even realizing it. Our image of God is oftentimes connected in some way to our parents, good or bad, true or untrue. In fact, as I think back now as an adult, I can think when my sort of first and biggest impression of God was actually formed, and it was formed by my dad. And he had absolutely no idea it was happening at the time. So I was 4 years old, and we're the same age as my daughter Gigi. And while the specifics are kind of a little blurry to me, the impact is crystal clear. There was a season of time when my dad would come home from a long day at work with a little gift under his arms, a gift for me. It happened several times, and sometimes it would be like Hot Wheels. Sometimes it would be like, like Legos. A couple times it was like old school, original like Star Wars figures, which I wish I still had to this day because it'd be worth a lot of money. It was completely unexpected at first. I'm not even sure why he was bringing me home gifts after work. My hunch is, now as I reflect back, to these gifts were actually in some way more a gift from my mom, because they probably had some kind of fight or something like that, and he was just trying to buy the peace through me. You know, if that was the case, I had no complaints. Now, it wouldn't take long for these little gifts to move from the category of unexpected surprises to an expected contract of love. I wasn't sure why I was receiving them, but I was absolutely sure that I would continue to receive them until, of course, the day that he came home empty-handed. So again, this is 4-year-old Jarrett here. I asked him, Dad, where's my gift? You know, and he kind of looked at me and said, gift? You know, it's like this is the first time he'd ever even heard the word before. Gift? Like, yeah, my gift. You know, what did you bring me home today? And his answer was honestly to me as empty as his arms. He said, oh, yeah, sorry, son, there's no gift today. There had been at somewhere a breach in our contract, a break in our unspoken agreement. It was an innocent and honestly sort of disappointing moment for me as a little guy that should have been kind of lost in the shuffle of all the thousands of other moments of my childhood. But it's a moment that I never quite got over. And so much of my relationship with God for much of my life would be built on the blueprint of that moment, me expecting God to do things for me so long as I kept up my end of the bargain for Him. Years later, I'd agree upon a good working relationship with God on those terms where I wouldn't ask for much from Him, just that He sort of keeps little gifts sort of coming to my life. I never prayed like crazy prayers like to win the lottery, never prayed that God would bring my grandfather back from the dead, although that would have been cool. That would be too much though. Instead, I just would settle in and depend on sort of the daily little gifts of good health, minimal pain or loss in my life, to be well liked by others, nothing extravagant, just the basics. And in return, I would sort of follow God. I would show up at the front door. I would do the things that good kids were supposed to do, and I wouldn't do the things that bad kids were doing. It was a good plan for us. It's one that worked honestly for about like 20 years. But this plan, it wouldn't work forever. The reality of life and the pain even of life would change and alter and challenge this unspoken and unclear agreement that I'd made with God. Eventually, this sort of agreement I had with this false image of God just flat out stopped working. It wouldn't be long till God no longer worked within my terms, which led me to wonder if He had ever worked within them at all, or if I had ever even actually known God at all. See, in sort of all the mess and sort of chaos that had come into my life, I had built a God from my parents. And I began to question not only what I had done with my life, but more important, what God had done with it. Or better put, what God had done to it. See, the role that your parent plays in shaping your view of God is big and real. How could it be anything other than that? I mean, just like think about it for a second. Your parents are your first and most formidable relationships that you have. They're sort of your first invitation to affection and acceptance and strength and tenderness and authority and to stability and love. Their ability to give you what you need, as well as their inability to do so, all that goes into the mix of how you actually perceive God, how you perceive Him to be, and how you experience Him well beyond your childhood. Good or bad, right or wrong, spoken or unspoken, in their presence or even in their absence, whether they realized it or not. All of it has shaped your view of God. I think of friends of mine like my friend Lisa, whose dad, as an adult woman, whose dad has yet to say the words, "I love you" to her. And he's managed to make it 22 years by saying nothing more than just "me too" to his daughter's desire for that sort of verbal love and affirmation. So now she's left with a very distant God. Her view of God is that He's very distant and uninterested and unimpressed with her life. Or I think about my friend Doug. I shouldn't laugh. I think about my friend Doug, who discovered at 30 years old that his mom is more affectionate and affirming of their family cat than she ever was with any of her kids. Then there's a guy I know named Jack, whose dad liked to take his fears and frustrations from his life out in the form of a fist. And this friend longed to experience the love of God in the absence of that kind of fear. He wanted to believe in a God who unconditionally loved him just as he was. But the possibility would prove to be far too impossible. At age 27, just 3 days after he and I spent a lunch together, laughing and crying and praying and talking about his relationship with God, he would actually end up taking his own life. And if you had to stop and describe just for a second the God that you have formed from the view that you have of your parents, what would this God look like? How have their best and worst attempts and intentions actually been used to shape the God that you have come to know? What is it in their story that shaped your story about how you view God? Maybe it's a divorce in your family, and that's made it hard for you to wonder if God's really going to stay with you. Maybe there was an affair or a break of trust. Maybe it's an over-demanding parent, or a parent who may give you everything you want but gives you very little of what you actually need. Maybe it's an alcoholic parent, an abusive parent. I mean, the list could just keep going and going and going. Is it possible that your God has actually become really nothing more than just sort of this exaggerated shadow of your parents? Is it possible? Is it possible that God is so much more than that? See, no matter who your parents are, there's a reality of God that is available to every single one of us. No matter what your story is, there's a truth about God, an image of God that is repeated again and again and again throughout the Bible. And it's this image of God as our Father, our heavenly Father, our perfect Father, a perfect parent who loves us unconditionally. So there's a moment in the Bible where you and I get a glimpse of God's perfect parent heart. And He shows it towards His Son, Jesus. I mean, have you ever even stopped to think about that? That we call God our Father and Jesus His Son. God's heart of a parent is so clear throughout the Bible. And this moment that I'm talking about comes really at the beginning of Jesus' public ministry. It's before He ever taught anything. It's before He ever performed any miracles, healed anyone, or brought anyone back from the dead. Before He did any of that kind of stuff. It comes at the baptism of Jesus. Look at God's perfect parental heart of love. The moment that Jesus comes up out of the waters, this is what the scriptures teach us. The moment that Jesus comes up out of those baptismal waters, the skies open up and He saw God's Spirit, which looked like a dove, descending down and landing on Him. And along with the Spirit, a voice said this, "This is my Son, whom I've chosen and marked by my love. He's the delight of my life." This is God's heart for you and for me. This is so much bigger than the sort of supersized version of my parents that I created for God. He is your heavenly Father who loves you unconditionally, a perfect parent, and you are marked by His love. You are the delight of His life, and you may just need to hear those words right now. He loves you and delights in you. Now imagine if you tried to start every day knowing that you're loved, that you are a delight. I think that would honestly change the way that, not only that we view God, but the way that we view ourselves. I think it would change the way that we start and end our days. And so that's the invitation to us, students. That's the invitation that we have, is to sort of scrap our supersized version of our parents that we've come to form in God, all of our assumptions that we think must be true of Him because they were true of them, and to embrace and know, have a relationship with a God who is our perfect parent, who loves you and delights in you. This is who God is.